Amy, so this video is going to walk through how to set up a program in OpenLMS Work, which it did look like there were quite a few programs already on your site, but like I mentioned in the other video, I don't know if your implementation team set those up for you or if you built those. So I'm operating on the assumption that you've never built a program in OpenLMS Work before. I do think you'll like the interface. It's pretty straightforward. I'm going to do this on one of our demo sites because once you create a program, you can archive it, but right now you cannot delete them. So I didn't want to make a junk program on your site that's just kind of like a test program and have you have it there until functionality is added in to be able to delete old programs instead of archive them. So just on the test site right now, it's going to be in the same spot that we were looking at in the other video. So it's just site management. We're going to click to expand that, and then programs. And so once this loads, I'll have a list of my existing programs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click Add Program over here, and it'll prompt me for a little bit of information. So this would be just, let's see, test program for Amy. I can optionally give this one a description. I do recommend a description, if only for future you. Very often we create things and then a couple months later we were like, wait, what was that for? So obviously a good descriptive name and a helpful description is good there too. You'll only see this the first time you create it, although you can always change it later. I'm going to click Done, and it's going to bring me to the first page, which is details. I'll hide the navigation bar so that we have a bit more space. Okay, the first step in this timeline is going to be details, and then we'll go through all the other ones here. On details, you will have a couple of questions that you have to answer, as well as some optional things. It's worth noting that if you come back into a program that you've created that's been running for a little bit, you will have a chart in here that shows you how your enrolled users are progressing. So you can obviously see what percentage of the users are working on it but haven't completed it, which have completed, and which have expired. So if your program has an expiration date, it would show you how many users did complete it but now need to possibly complete it again. You can add a program image. This is optional, but I do recommend it. I have another tab open here with the dashboard for this site, so if your learners are looking at programs, and these are example programs, the images that you upload will show up in these tiles for them. If you add a description in the previous step, that would show up here. You can also optionally add an external reference. I noticed that some of the training on your site seems to reference national health safety standards. So if you are referencing, let's say some national health and safety standards that are being taught through that course, you could reference those here, just as a quick example. Toward the bottom, though, you have three options that do need to be addressed, and there are already some default values there, so you might be fine with the defaults, but it's worth taking a look at them. One is, will this program need to be repeated on a regular basis? So if you say yes, you could turn this into a recurring program. If you say no, then it's just a one-time program that the learners have to go through at least once. Will the program be completed when all the program courses are complete or when a certain number of points have been obtained? Most of the time, when our clients are creating a program, they want the learners to go through every course that's been put into that program. Every so often, though, clients have a program where, let's say there are 5 courses, but the learners only have to complete 3 out of the 5 courses. If that's the case, if they only have to complete some of the courses but not all of the courses, I would probably switch over to points obtained, set every course to, let's say, 100 points. And so, if every course is worth 100 points and I have 5 courses but I want my learners to take 3, then I'm going to require that they earn at least 300 points to prove that they've gone through at least 3 of the courses. But again, most of the time it's just all the courses in the program have to be completed. Can the users enroll themselves into this program, or is approval required? So this one won't factor in as much if we assign a cohort or if we assign specific learners later in the program development. So if I assign a cohort, everyone in that cohort will be added into this program. But your learners usually also have the option of self-enrolling or requesting approval to enroll. Let me hop back over to that dashboard tab again and show you what the difference would look like on the learner side. So if I were, do I still have all of them? I might just have the one. So if it's a self-enroll, it would basically have an enroll button here. And I think this one was the one, so on the testing site we may have forgotten to remove the user from this one. But it'll say enroll if it's self-enroll, and it'll basically say request enrollments, something like that, if they have to request access to the program. So that's the basic difference there. And then certification ID, if you did have a certificate that went along with this, you could assign that here. You can also, it's a little hard to see, but you can manage your certificates here. I'll open that in a new tab. So if there's a certificate that's associated with completion of this program, you can create that and then have it administered or delivered to your users once they complete the program. The one thing that I do want to emphasize about this page, because most of these are pretty straightforward settings, please don't click Supersede Program. That makes this sort of the parent program for all other programs. It becomes much more important than any other program on your site. It's like the Uber program. It's very, very, very rare when someone actually wants to do this. That's why there's a big warning that this can't be undone. So I recommend not clicking that particular button. All right. Again, I recognize I've made the text very large, so apologies if anything is difficult to see. All right. Next tab after details is courses, and this one's pretty straightforward. We're basically selecting which courses are in this program. I know it's going to look pretty. It's you're kind of guided to add courses by searching for courses, and that'll be true for some of the other tabs in here. But for adding courses into this, and even in some of the other things like cohorts, you're not actually searching for courses here to add them, you're actually adding them over here. So it's just a common thing that we see people run into. I've requested some updates to the interface because this is really for you to search courses that you've already added into the cohort or into the program, excuse me. So what I'll do is I'll come over here, I'll click add course, and there is a drop down menu. They'll show you all of your courses on your site, but you can also just search for them. So if I searched for health, I have a health and safety course here. The other thing that I'll need to do is select completion type. So is this optional or required? I'm going to select required. I'll click update. And now I can just add a new course. So let's add a new one. There's the H5P course. This one will be required. And it's going to prompt me for the order. So the first one that I had ended up in the first position. This is also defaulting to the first position. So if I add this right now, it will end up being above health and safety. I'll bump health and safety to number 2. What I can do instead is save this in the position that I want it in, and then I'll move it down. But I'll just add my courses that way. The next thing to do is hop over to the timeline tab. And this relates to how long your users have to actually do or complete this program. Some folks set this as a fixed date, so if it's an annual certification and it begins on January 1st and it ends on December 31st, then you might want to set fixed date and set your start and end dates there. You can also set an expiration date. So earlier when we were talking about that chart on the details page, this if you set this date, that defines the expiration. Otherwise, it defaults to it being relative to user enrollment, so it's kind of like a rolling enrollment. The grace period is how long do they have after their training period ends. So in other words, if the training period is 30 days, I can give a grace period of 5 days. So they have 5 additional days after the training period ends to go in and finish up their work. I mean, COVID's still a thing. Everyone's a bit stressed out. Like it's perfectly reasonable to assume that some folks may lose track of the work that they're doing. So we can incorporate a grace period here. But this is really just how long do the users have to do the training program. If you wanted to, you could always set this to 0, and that means that they have an indefinite amount of time to complete their training. But I'm going to set this to 30. I'll set this to 5. You do have to have a value for both since they're both required, but you can always set one to 0 if you need to. Then I'm going to pop over to notifications. This one's a little bit more intensive because you can create a lot of different notifications for a lot of different purposes. But these are automatically generated messages that would go to the learners in this program based off of certain events. So usually it is a notification that is triggered by an event or a milestone. Let me give an example. So I'm going to click Add Notification, and I'll show you one of my favorite notification types in here. Let's see. It's before training end date, program not completed. So before training end date, program not completed. This would only go to learners if it's before the end date and they still haven't completed the program. So that is the trigger. What it's going to prompt me to do is select the days from or to the event. So let's say it is 5 days before the program end date for my learner and they still haven't completed it. I can then type a subject and a notification body text that would be emailed to them 5 days before their program ends if they haven't completed the course. And I can say, hey, by the way, you still haven't completed this training. We also have some tags in here that you can use to customize these a little bit. So I can say, hey, first name, so it would autofill with like, hey, Jeremy, you haven't finished your course yet. I can even include, the site URL and a reminder of like the program start and end date, just different things like that. So I really like being able to build some of these ahead of time because you don't have to put specific dates on them. It's just related to, let's say 5 days before. If I wanted to add a bit more accountability, one of these options a bit further down, let me find it here, is on training end date program not completed manager. So what this would do is if this user has not completed, I can't use the days from or to because this is already a defined date like the training end date. If one of my learners hits that 30-day period that I've set for this program and they haven't completed it, this will automatically send an email to their manager letting them know that they're out of compliance. So if this is a really important safety training, for example, and they have to be certified on it before they can, as a condition of employment, this could just let their manager know, like, by the way, your employee is out of compliance. They haven't completed their training. And again, you have the same subject and notification ones here, but you can set up all of these notifications and then they just trigger automatically as the program runs. So I'd encourage you to spend a bit of time there. It's a really clever feature. I like it quite a bit. From there, it is just related to users that are assigned to this program or skills that are assigned to this program. So if you do have skills, you could add those in here. If you're not using those, you can just ignore them. But org units, cohorts, learners, from here we can add an org unit or a role. So let's say I could add, all the warehouse folks. Again, this is a test site and specific roles. So all the department managers in warehouse would be added into this program. Again, test site, didn't want to do this on your site because there's no way to delete a program right now, only archive it. And I didn't want to leave, fluff on your site because, you deserve to have the programs that you're actually using. But you could add organizational units and roles. So anyone who is in the organizational unit warehouse with the role of department manager would be automatically added into this program as an example. You can also go to skills and add in skills if you're using those. I'm not sure if you are or not, but we can go more into that if you like. And like I was telling you in the other video, this is where you can go to add a cohort. So if we have created a cohort for your site, and again, I'm on a different one, so I don't have the one that I created in the last video, but let's say this was it. I can go ahead and add that cohort in, and now all learners who are added into that cohort are also added into this program. It just happens automatically for me. So like you were saying, any employee with a SAS code of A who's automatically added into that other cohort that we made on your site, they would automatically be enrolled into the program. Same goes with individual learners. So if you wanted to, you could add individual learners in here. You can just search for folks. I think Jeff probably has an account in here. Yep, so I can add Jeff in here. And I can set their status. Are they not started? Are they in progress? Are they completed? I'm going to say not started. This also works well if you have a user who completed the program, but then you had to change the requirements, but you want to make sure that they get exempted. Let's say there's a certificate associated with this program that we set up in details, like we talked about that a couple of minutes ago. So when learners successfully complete the program, they get a certificate, and you know that Jeff went through the training in the previous form, and he doesn't really have to go through this program again. I can add Jeff in here and say, Jeff actually completed this all the way back in, let's just randomly pick May 25th, 2020. So, Jeff's already been marked as complete. Jeff will receive a notification. He'll have the certificate related to this program, and he can show his supervisor and say, actually, I'm already in compliance with this. I know there's a new program, but I've already been added in here. So it's not just adding in users individually to take a program. Like maybe you're working with a colleague who wants to see what the training looks like, but they're not a member of the cohort. You could add them in. But it's also a way to take the folks who have already completed the program in a previous form and give them credit for it. The only other thing that you would need to pay attention to, all the changes that you make here are automatically saved except for one, and that is the status of the program. So by default, it's in draft. When you're ready to make your program live, you would set it to published. Published. So published and then save. And what that will do is it will make it live. It will become immediately available to any of the affected users. And really, that's all there is to it. So it's a really clever little timeline interface. You'll set up your program name and details, add your courses, set the timeline information, preset notifications if you think they'll be helpful, and then select who should have access to this program. If you have any follow-up questions, do let me know, but hopefully this was helpful.